Ram. So, after sitting in this and making engine noises for a while, I've come to the conclusion that the steering rack is not really going to work. It comes down to the fact that, well, I can only turn the wheel 180 degrees, where the steering rack, to get full lock, has to go 180 degrees each direction. The wheel can do a full 360. Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is actually change from steering rack to a fairly standard sort of go-kart steering, with the shaft going through, a plate on it, and then the tie rods come from that plate out to the hubs. Not keen on changing the design because I spent money on the steering rack, and well. What I think I'm going to do is cut a piece of 75/50 box section down, make it an angle, and then use that to bolt onto the 4 mounting holes, and then from there we'll put another bearing holder, which will be like that piece of pipe I used on the steering column, and then the shaft will just come through and butt straight into that. After that, then we'll make the upright. And so in order to do the steering, we've got to pull the motor, so it's a good thing we put all the tack welds where we can cut them. Engine comes out, engine goes in, bonnet comes off. Alright, so you get a better idea now. We've got the 4 mounting bolts for the steering rack. So what we're going to do is put a piece of steel across here that'll be a piece of angle that'll come up the front. The bearing will be mounted into that, and we'll just replace this bottom shaft with one that's just a straight shaft all the way through. It'll seat in the bearing in the front, and then we'll just bring an upright plate off of that that'll have the push rods, so we can adjust the holes up and down to give it more or less turn for the steering. Alrighty. You may have recognised this piece from episode 2. It was my stand-in for a steering shaft. Well, that might actually be the steering shaft now. Alrighty. Next step, the piece of angle. So I found this piece of 40 by 40 by 3 angle. Figure I might as well use this instead of chopping up some good box section to make a piece of angle. So pretty good spot just there. So we need the bearing carrier now. Another 10mm strip off this. Now I've just got to check and make sure that's low enough to fit under the engine and all that. Alright, so I believe that that's still going to be too tall. Well, that's what that's saying. I do believe I'm going to have to cut some more out of this piece of angle to let the bearing drop down a bit lower. I'm also pretty sure I'm just going to weld this piece together with the bearing trapped inside it. Sacrificial bearings. So in the spirit of make it up as I go along, which is just this whole build in general, yeah, we're just going to do something a little bit different now. Right, so I've tacked the bearing carrier in the front there, and well, if I decide to put the steering rack in, it will still bolt in front of that. I just need to change the shafts over, and I think that's a good option. I'll put the earth clamp onto this, put a tack weld on the steering column, and then rotate it to work out where the best position is. That looks pretty good there now, so alright. Need a upright plate of some description. Not that big, but there'll be something to mount on there that these tie rods can come into. So I've got this piece. It's 65 by 5. Fairly heavy duty, but the steering is being mounted to it, so I've marked it out for a row of holes. I would cut that down shorter, but it's currently 10:15 at night, and yeah, so I'm just going to clamp this down, drill the holes, weld this in, and then tomorrow I'll cut it out. I'll cut it down to size, assuming it all works. Alright, so I've got all the holes drilled. I will come back and drill a couple of big holes in the middle just to lighten it up a bit. I'm going to take the top off at a later time after I know that I don't need any more holes. But for now, we're going to weld it in. So, finally made it to the part of the build where I can turn the steering wheel and the wheels turn. I'm pretty happy with that steering. It's not exactly what I had in mind originally, but it works. I'll be able to put it in the steering rack at a later date if I feel the need. Alright, so here we are at the end of the video. Steering's not quite complete, but it works. It's got adjustment. I do have to get the tie rods machined and adjusted for length because they're about this much too long. Alright, so steering's working, needs some fine adjustment and a few pieces machined, but I turn the wheel and the wheel turns. It's one fat tyre. Anyway, that's it for today's video. As always, customize everything. Is that another delivery?